David Dodge. Welcome to Green Energy Futures. Gregor Robertson is a green entrepreneur. He served as mayor of Vancouver for a decade, and now he's the global ambassador for the Global Covenant of Mayors taking action on climate change. In Vancouver, it all started with a campaign slogan to make the West Coast city the greenest city in the world.
That was in 2008 when I ran for mayor. And, it was a calculated commitment that Vancouver was already, in the top bracket, let's say the top 20 or 30 in the world as a sustainable city. But they're certainly in Scandinavia, cities like Copenhagen, Oslo, Stockholm, were leading the charge and decarbonizing their cities, reducing their impact on environment. They were cities to learn from, but I thought, let's give ourselves a challenge. We were hosting the Olympics in 2 years, and I thought this will be kind of in keeping with that global Olympic competition to be the best. And so I ran on that, was elected 3 times with majorities on my council.
As far as campaign commitments go, building the greenest city in the world was the most well-supported campaign promise, says Robertson. To be the greenest city, you had to do it all, but there were a few big-ticket items.
Yeah, well, buildings are number one in cities. They tend to be 55-60% or more of our pollution comes from buildings, and that's generally is the majority of that is the fossil fuels that we're burning in our buildings. Most of that is methane gas, natural gas. That is the climate emissions that rack up in our cities. In the case of Vancouver, we control our building code. So Vancouver's building code, we were able to make very significant changes to decarbonize our buildings. Basically, we've come all the way from very little around environment, climate, sustainability, to now having a building code that's the greenest in the Americas, but basically low carbon buildings, at this point, zero emission buildings. So once you have the materials factored in and the embodied carbon that's in the materials, the energy use in the building goes to net zero. If you take the fossil fuels out, BC's grid is almost 100% renewable. It's in the very high 90s. So if you have electrified buildings, then you have effectively a net zero energy in the buildings.
Another goal is to jumpstart the green economy in Vancouver, and it's worked.
We saw the industry in Vancouver really lead the world on green buildings and end up creating a lot of jobs, a lot of economy, exporting the technologies, exporting the expertise that have been developed here. So we're seeing a demand for that globally now in many cities, and the cities that move on it early have benefited.
The lion's share of Vancouver's emissions are from buildings at 57% and transportation at 36%.
So we came in basically and set the goal in the Greenest City Action Plan to get Vancouver over 50% out of cars. And at the time, we were in the low 40s. This was around 2010. We used the Olympics actually as a real booster jet to get people using public transit more, using active transportation. Yeah, Vancouverites got over 50% out of our cars. I think it was 4 years ahead of schedule. So we were shooting for 2020 to be 50% walk, bike, and transit. And we hit that 50% in 2016, 4 years ahead of schedule.
Vancouver's new goal is achieving 60% non-car transportation. As for electric vehicles, they set a goal of 50% by 2030 and 100% by 2040. And they introduced a requirement to install charging infrastructure in new buildings. They also worked on water, waste, and a host of other sustainability measures. So, did you make it? Is Vancouver the greenest city in the world?
We definitely got into the top 5, I think, by most calculations. There's a whole variety of different metrics and lists that come out around who the greenest city or most sustainable, or and Vancouver's always right up there in the top of that list. So obviously very proud of that.
Indeed, Vancouver has made it to the top 5 and is probably the greenest city in North America. There's still much to do, but there's something to be said for setting big goals. Next week, we talk to former Mayor Robertson about what he's doing now as the global ambassador of the Global Covenant of Mayors. Learn more at GreenEnergyFutures.ca. For Green Energy Futures, I'm David Dodge.